Embrace the magical side of life, where anything is possible and the infinite is accessible to all. Let's have a conscious conversation about what's going on in the world, in your life, and your relationship from the expanded perspective of your soul. The path to awareness begins and ends in the heart. So let's take it there, one step at a time, and learn to cultivate magic in your life every single day. In each episode, we share a collective space in which we discover the unique facets of our own magic and embody our superhuman qualities by humbly exploring how it's super simply to be human. Hosts Kai and Dell co-create a magical experience to remind you that you are magical as fuck. Now, be unleashed. This is our daily magic.
And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of our Daily Magic Podcast. As the intro said, we love to have magical conversations in which you, our viewers, get to see what is possible when someone actually unleashes their magic. We truly believe that each and every one of us have our own unique magic to give to the world. And our intention with having these powerful conversations is you can be able to discover ways that you can be able to cultivate more magic into your life and more magic into yourself. So let's get right into it. I am one half of the host, Dell, and
my name is Kai, and I have the pleasure of introducing our guest, Amy. I didn't even ask you how to pronounce your last name. Amy Edelstein?
Edelstein.
Edelstein, got it. Amy Edelstein. Amy is an educator, an author, and a nonprofit leader. She's a powerful communicator of ideas and beliefs that can help us transform ourselves and the culture that we live in. In 2014, Amy founded Inner Strength Education, a nonprofit 1,000 inner city teens in mindfulness and systems thinking. Not to mention, she has her own app called Inner Strength Vibe. Check that out. And Amy began her own mindfulness practice in 1978 and has been an avid practitioner, researcher, teacher, and author of transformative tools and practices. She received a Philadelphia Social Innovation Award for her organization's work in violence reduction. Hey, Amy is a Cornell University College Scholar, co-founder of the learning platform Emergence Education, and author of 6 books, including the award-winning bestseller The Conscious Classroom, and not to mention Adventure in Zanskar, which also received 2 awards, which I would love to hear more about. But Amy, in your own words, what is the magic that you are bringing to the table these days? How are you?
Great to be here. I love the name of your show. I think it's awesome. And I love what you're all about, which is really empowering everyone to find their own magic and to bring it to the forefront, because Lord knows the world really needs it. We need a lot of bright lights in the world right now, for all of our sake and for our kids' future. So yeah, I love what you're doing. I guess my daily magic has to do with really having profound faith that comes from experience in all of our capacity and potential to really be extraordinary. And we often think that we need something else. We need a different experience. We need to have been born somewhere else. We need to have different parents. We need to have a different history. We need to have the world be different. And there's always something outside that we're reaching for. And we do need a lot of change. We need stability. We need safety. We need economic resources. We need good education. And say it again, we need safety. It's just because I'm in Philadelphia, so I have to emphasize that one a couple of times. But we also can recognize the power of the heart now. And that power of the heart is where we draw the resources from to make change in the world. We don't draw those resources from outside, we draw them from inside. And the power of the heart is infinite, and it's a wellspring. And given how challenging life is right now, we all need to be able to tap into something that's always present so that we can keep filling ourselves and be able to make the changes that we want to see.
Powerful. I had to allow the pause to marinate from the powerful message you just said, and coming from the heart, that infinite space and the climate of the world. It seems that obviously we're all aware that there needs to be changes, but it seems like we're trying to have those changes from here, trying to figure it out from this state instead of coming together from here and create something from here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think that, there are, given a chance, there are a lot of good people in the world, given a chance. But we're in a time where we are being manipulated. And we're being manipulated for ratings. We're being manipulated for other people's power. We're being manipulated to sell product. And we don't even realize, because of the way the digital medium has developed, the way we're getting our news, we are being shown a world that makes us believe in the worst of each other. And when you actually sit down and talk to somebody, we're in a time where you hardly talk to your neighbor, let alone just somebody on the street. You say hello, you say, how are you? You say, how are you doing today? Are you having a hard day? Anything I can do to make you feel better? That kind of just common generosity and kindness is something we're being educated out of. We're being educated to fear. And that's not going to get us where we want to go. So it's almost like being a human being with care and compassion and just respect for one another as another human being it's become a revolutionary act. It's become a countercultural act, because even a lot of the revolutionaries are fueled by that energy of pushing against in a negative way. And I'm not saying we don't need a lot of strength, to move the needle on systemic racism and injustice, to move the needle on climate change. We do need to push. But when you look at those people who did really amazing things, like Nelson Mandela, he was in prison for 27 years and he met with de Klerk for years at the end. And he was able to orchestrate a flip in their culture without war, without like millions of people getting hurt. And that's kind of unbelievable. And he did it through that power of the heart. And he did it through dialogue. And he did it through finding common ground and ways to, obviously he suffered and he was very aware of suffering, but he allowed himself to find a way where he could lead enemies to want the same thing. And that takes a lot more. It's a lot easier to pursue the energy of division, even though unity, I think, is our natural state. I really do think, given a chance, we've all experienced it. There've been moments as children when we've gone outside and it was beautiful. We forgot everything and we were just happy for no reason. That's part of a human nature. I do believe that the more we can inspire each other to act in small ways from that place, then it will become contagious. And it is, when we see it as counter-revolutionary, it's important then, because then it's like, everyone thinks, oh, kindness, it's kind of weak, but in this culture, you have to be really strong. You have to really go against what we're being taught. But it is how we're going to get through this, because our problems are deep and they're huge, and we're going to have to come together.
Yeah. I forgot who said it. I think Russell Brand said it in a recent video. And he was saying like the state of this country. And he was saying something how we don't need to build a wall like to try to protect us or for safety. What America really needs to do is to build a large mirror and start to take a look at that reflection.
Yeah. That's definitely a part of it. But in order to be able to look at a reflection that is harsh,
Mm-hmm.
we have to be carried by faith in goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people live with so much fear and alienation that they can't even begin that process of self-reflection, because it's hard. It's hard to see the reality of what this country has been founded on, what Western colonialism has done, what's been lost, what continues to be lost, and and to be able to hold that process of grieving for the suffering of humanity and for the lost creativity, the lost beauty. I mean, it's not just how people have suffered, but it's what wasn't allowed to come into being, the capacities. I see that with the teens I work with. I work in Philadelphia public high schools, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much creativity and passion and energy, and also urgent that I want that passion and energy to be able to flower, to be able to be what it can be and see what's going to happen out of it. I can't predict what's going to happen, but so we do need to look in the mirror. And Russell Brand had a powerful non-dual experience. So he's saying that from his own personal experience of being able to rest in a deep and profound, what you would call magic, maybe your daily magic, or love or non-duality. But he can say that having that experience. So that's why I feel like we also need to spend time in contemplation and reflection, in allowing ourselves to get back in touch with the heart, because that's what's going to give us the strength to be able to do that. Otherwise, people just won't do it. It's too much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or they'll be embittered, and we don't want that either. That's not going to help.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, this heart space. Has this been a space you always been in? Has it a space that you're in and then you lost, or quote unquote lost it and rediscovered it? Like, what was your journey to actually get into this heart space that you're in right now?
It's both. It's both. Every time I thought I lost it and came back to it, I was like, I never went anywhere. I thought it wasn't there. It's just like when you're a child, when it's night, you worry that the sun's not going to come back. And then it's morning again. You're like, oh, I guess it didn't go anywhere, but it seemed like it went somewhere. But didn't really. When I was, my family was not very supportive of these things. But when I was young, I had experiences of wholeness. I didn't grow up in a family that felt whole, but I had these experiences that I couldn't really explain, of wholeness. And so there was something from inside that was always sort of pushing me to find that. And I went to high school in the 70s, which was it was kind of like now, we were really cynical because the 60s didn't work out. And, everyone had it good in the 60s because it was peace, love, and happiness. And then the 70s came and it was just kind of everything was starting to fall apart. And, but that was when I really started reading books, and particularly books about seekers and people who went to the East to seek. I had a friend who had two older brothers who went into the Peace Corps instead of going to Vietnam. And so they had, I mean, it was classic, but they had a blacklight room on their third floor. I mean, your audience they're probably too young, but blacklight rooms in the 70s, there were rooms that were painted black, and then there were pictures and slogans painted with fluorescent paint. You turned on these black lights, and then the fluorescent paint would shine. So it was really kind of far out. They said, make love, not war, and flowers and all kinds of stuff.
What?
So we used to go up there, my friend and I, and we were 10 years younger than them. And they had a book. They had Ram Dass, Be Here Now, which was the hippie book of that generation, like the Bible. And they had a yoga book, Richard Hittleman's 28-Day Guide to Yoga, he was like one of the first teachers who had a TV show in LA about how to flatten your tummy for housewives. You vacuum and you flatten your tummy. But he was actually a really serious student of this powerful Indian teacher who's really one of the greatest saints of the 20th century, Ramana Maharshi. So behind it all, he was like really extraordinary, but it was definitely pretty lame, lightweight. But I was very touched by that. And Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi, where he went around and met all these saints. So that was my high school years, listen to music and try to figure out, well, who knows what's what. And we learned how to meditate, and we made a pact that whether we went together or not, we were going to go to India one day. We both did. We didn't go together, and I spent 4 years there. I had my 21st birthday in the mountains of Nepal, and I stayed for 4 years, 1983 to 86.
Very cool.
I'm curious now, because in India, I hear all these stories about just like mystical things that unravel over there. And even Ram Dass shared a story of he went there and he met a spiritual teacher there, and the spiritual teacher said, "I got a present for you." It had nothing in his hand. It made a chain pop up like a medallion and gave it to him. And then Ram Dass was like, "How's this happen?" Like, he got curious about it, and somebody said to him, they said, "He fooled you," because he's like, "This is not the only one. This is not the only medallion. He has a whole factory filled with these medallions, but he brings it here with his mind." And then Ram Dass was just like, "Whoa." So, did you have any 4 years in India? I have a feeling that something mystical happened in your time there, whatever it may have been.
A lot of things happened. A lot of really beautiful things. I did a lot of studying, and I did a lot of long retreats, and I spent 12 months just walking in the 4 northern states in the high mountains. So, I wouldn't recommend to the younger people to do some of the things I did, but I'm glad I did them. And where to begin? See, the thing that happens, and India's changed in the 40 years since I first went there. It is really a different country. It has sadly adopted a lot of the consumerism and materialism and the right-wing ideologies that we see so much that are poisoning the Western cultures, particularly America. So it's not the same as it was but it's been a country that valued, the realization of the heart, the realization of non-duality, the realization of awakening, which means clarity from ignorance and selfishness and aggression and violence for thousands of years. And they have beautiful technologies, a lot of different ones. Buddhist and Hinduism comes in all different forms and different practices, and there are all kinds of fringe, weird stuff going on. But the main message is that we can realize the sacredness of life to such a degree that we wouldn't harm others because we just wouldn't do it. It would be a natural way of walking through the world. So you wouldn't have to think nonviolence. You wouldn't have to think love one another. You wouldn't have to think, be kind or be compassionate, because just the way you saw the world, you would know not to do that. It's a little bit, if some of your listeners are from Philly, like in Philly, when I moved here in 2013, you actually learn whether you have a green light or red light, you have to look very carefully. And especially if you have a green light and the other cars have a red light, you have to look even more carefully, because in Philly, when they see a red light, they drive faster to get through quick so they can sneak through. And so, like at first, it was I would walk across the street and it was a daily nightmare. And now it's just second nature. I don't think about, is there somebody, trying to sneak through a red light, driving double speed? It's like I automatically look so I don't get hit. So once you have this realization of this higher order of insight and wisdom into how things work, and that every action has consequences and everything you do is going to put something in motion. So you really have this very energetic care to just put good things in motion. You don't think about it anymore. And that was why I loved being in India, because you can learn how to do that. And everyone's talking about how to do it. You get on a train and some stranger will talk to you about what you're doing there and what you've learned and what teachers you've seen and what are your practices. And it was just a way of life. And I was so hungry for that. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was not a hotbed of enlightenment. It was just a regular East Coast industrial city,
Go Steelers.
Yeah. So I feel like the experiences that I had were, I met amazing teachers. I never met Neem Karoli Baba, Ram Dass's teacher, but I met really amazing teachers. And I met really amazing people who were so steeped in this way of living that it gave me faith in humanity. It was like, oh my God, people actually can get along with each other. They can, just ordinary people, they can live in a way that is really filled with life and fun and full of energy, not at all staid or uptight, but kind. And I thought, okay, well, it can be done. And it gave me faith.
So it sounds like you were able to bring a lot of those teachings back with you and implement them in a really amazing and magical way. When going through your really impressive bio, you were talking about violence reduction. We've got a lot of things going on today that could really use that kind of wisdom applied. How do you see that what it is that you've cultivated in terms of violence reduction can affect this side of the world today?
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to that. I mean, the first thing I always say, because I never know who is listening, is I would really like the politicians to get the $100 handguns off the street. Thank you very much. Let's just start there. Because when you're a 15-year-old boy and you think that you have to carry because everybody else does, and you can get a gun for $100, no matter how much meditation you do, you're not going to be able to make kids safe. So I just always need to put that out, whether I'm talking to somebody from the Attorney General's office or the district attorney's office or the school superintendent's office or anyone. We we have to be common sense about this. And then beyond that, of course, what I work with young people is to give them tools to calm and to self-reflect and to be able to be with themselves and to be able to become intimate with their own creative potentials and capacities and with that sense of love. When they're just, a million different examples, but and this is a small example, but when these things touch someone, they go very deep. I had one young woman, ninth grader at South Philly High, and she was very full of energy. She wasn't violent, but she was very full of energy. And she came in one morning and she literally was so excited. She sat on top of her desk. She couldn't sit in her chair. She had to sit on top of her desk because she was so excited. And she said very loudly, she said, "My boyfriend broke up with me over the weekend." Okay, I wonder what's coming. She said, "I was going to say all kinds of things to him." And of course, we got to hear some of what she was going to say to him. And let's just say she had some strong language for him. She said, "You know what I did? I went up to my bed. I just sat on my bed. I did my breathing exercises. And you know what? I didn't need to say anything to him." It was awesome. She was so proud of herself. She said, "I didn't need to say anything to him."
Yeah.
And she actually, I kept seeing her over the years. She, when she was a senior in high school, she went from being one of those kids who's sort of squirting out all over the edges, all over the place. She was a leader in high school. She was an example. The climate manager was always getting her to talk to other kids. She went on, to go to a 2-year college, a 2-year degree, and then she was going to go to a 4-year college. I mean, she literally, that sense of I'm not a victim to my emotions or to other people. I can chart my own way. I have tools. I have strengths. And it literally, it opened up a world for her, which was, so when you can do that, then, you're releasing lightning in a bottle. You're like letting it out. And then these kids will grow up into beautiful human beings and they'll help each other.
Whew. You just said something potent, not for just for kids, but for whoever's listening here on this episode. I had to take some notes, some timestamps. I'm like, oh yeah, we gotta get this out to the world. Thank you for sharing that, Amy. And yeah, it's that example right there of what you shared with the girl and what she did is something that all of us should incorporate in our life, in which a situation happens, stuff comes up, you become aware of what's happening, but you're choosing how to respond to it in a way as opposed to being consumed by all those emotions and responding on impulses, which me personally, I feel like these things that are happening in the world are people responding out of impulses with stuff.
Exactly. And like I said, at the beginning, we're being trained to impulse buys. It's like a thing that people have, they shamelessly promote, buy on impulse buy. It's a good thing, here. But it doesn't, it doesn't lead to strength. Look how strong she got from one incident, and if she had just mouthed off, and said all kind, typed all kinds of things back, and then they would have been in a feud, and then this would have happened, that would have happened, wouldn't have gone anywhere.
Yeah. Anybody's experiencing a breakup, you should listen to this because it happened. How you going to handle it? It's like the card that life gives you in the moment. Here's your card. How are you going to deal with it?
And how much do you care about yourself? Because the focus is on, I need to get back. But when you really care about yourself, you don't want to put yourself in that energy. You don't want to perpetuate it. You don't want to be stuck to it. It's sticky. all that kind of negativity sticks to us and it leads one thing to another. And we never really feel better when we, you know, mouth off that way. It feels better for like 15 seconds. And then all the karma of it comes back and hits you in the face. And you're like, oh, that wasn't so good.
Amy, what are your favorite practices to use on a daily basis for yourself?
These days, mostly I like to sit in what I call open awareness. We can do a short one if you'd like.
Oh, yeah.
Because that'll be the easiest way to describe it. So if you're driving, please don't do this. If you're listening to this in your car, you can always access the episode later. But if you're not driving, just let yourself come into a comfortable position where your spine is tall and your vertebrae are stacked one on the other. And now that your posture is tall, and your neck is balanced, just allow yourself to sit back into yourself, like just a little bit. It's almost like not moving, but like you're sitting back in an easy chair. So just let yourself be just a little bit at ease. And you can close your eyes if you'd like, if you're in a place where you can, or just find a beautiful color or shape wherever you are. Just a little corner that's pleasant, and just rest your eyes there. And now imagine that you're outside in a really beautiful place, perfectly safe. It's the perfect temperature. And you're just looking up at the sky. It's the middle of the day. First you notice the things in the sky. You notice the birds. Maybe there's a butterfly. Maybe there's an airplane. Clouds. And now just shift your attention a little bit so you notice just the sky, not the things in the sky. Just that vast stretch of blue, white sky. And as you look at that space, notice how it just extends back and back and back. And it stretches infinitely in all directions. Just allow yourself to be easy, just resting your attention on the sky, resting your attention on the space. Now, as we begin to bring this very short practice to a close, just begin to refocus on the objects in the room around you and stretch your fingers, stretch your toes, and we can finish. How'd you like it?
It was great. It was really great. Is that how you typically begin your day?
I begin my day with half an hour. I lived in a meditation center for 27 years. So I used to do a lot of hours every day. Like I'd start with a few hours. Now I live in Center City. So I just do half an hour every morning. And I do more when things are busy and hard. If we've lost a kid in one of our schools and I know I'm going to go work with the teachers and the kids, I'll do more because, when it's hard, we feel like we don't have time and we feel like we can't be still because things are hard and they're heavy on the heart. But I do more because, like I said, when we keep restoring ourselves, and obviously in that practice, when I sit, I don't use the metaphor, but the metaphor is to show, look, the sky is always there. Our awareness is always there. Human consciousness is always there. And it's big enough to hold everything. The sky holds exploding stars and dying planets and birthing stars and our little world and everything in it. And, it gives us a different perspective, that we have the sense that, okay, if I pay attention to this way of being aware, I'm aware of everything, it gives us that little bit more space. So we feel like, okay, I have a little bit more room. I'm not, otherwise we feel like we can't take one more thing. And doing this open awareness practice makes us feel like, okay, I have a little bit more give in my system. Maybe not a lot. Maybe it was a really hard week. Maybe really tough things happened. But I have just a little bit more give. And when we have a little bit more give, it's enough. Yeah, we don't want to like constantly demand that we're always, in this state of existential bliss. We're human beings. But if we have a little bit, that's enough to remember. It's enough to know that the heart is always there.
Yeah. And you made a great point with not always being in that bliss mode. And especially for what happened last week with the shooting, for myself, because I have a son the same age as those kids that are lost. So it definitely brought me into a space of just feeling the pain and the grief, and also just that fear. Like, for as a parent, and I said it to Kai before, I'm like, one of the greatest fears I feel as a parent is because as a parent, you feel like you're the protector of your child. And in a moment like that, in which you're not able to protect them, I can only imagine what they're going through, those parents. And that's I always love a space like this. I have conversation like this, especially from you. You have held space for people who are dealt with their own losses and grievance, and definitely want to hear your powerful message as regards to the space of the grievance of losing a child.
Yeah. I feel for all of us, for those parents, for so many parents, too many parents and grandparents who have lost children unnecessarily, preventable. And it's hard. I don't tell this to somebody who's grieving, because when we're grieving, grief takes its own time and its own space, and no one can speak for another in that grieving process. What we can do is hold space and be there and allow that person to speak or not speak, or emote or not emote. There isn't one length of time for grieving. And as a nation that allows those things to happen, and we have to say, by not preventing, the easy access to weapons, we are enabling. And I don't care what you say, it's just a fact. If you didn't have access to it, a kid would go crazy and maybe take a 2x4, but 2x4s are a lot easier to stop than automatic weapons. People have gone crazy in all ages, and we live in a harsh time, and communities are shattered, and the existential threat of global warming, I think, makes us all feel ill at ease, even if we don't even feel it's impacting our lives. I think it's there. So, but we can't enable, and I think that's a very hard fact to come to terms with. And our law enforcement has also been, perpetrators, and that's a very hard fact to come to terms with. So we're living in a more unsafe society than we're led to believe. We're supposed to believe that America's a free and safe country, but of course it isn't. I'll take New Zealand anytime in that way. But I think that, for all of us, we want to access our care and compassion for ourselves, and to not blame ourselves. For parents, it's very hard. That automatic response of, I should have been there to protect my child. I should have done more, even though you couldn't have. But it's encoded in us to care and to protect. And those are the voices to choose not to pay attention to. The loss and the care and the love. Those are the ones to pay attention to, but not the self-blame, because it doesn't go anywhere. And, coping with loss, talking about, one's child and remembering and keeping that child present. A lot of people think that, oh, we shouldn't talk about it, we shouldn't bring it up, it's too painful. But the parent loves the child, so we want the child to be in our memories. We want to keep them alive in our memories. We want to keep them alive for their siblings and the stories that we tell, and for their aunts and uncles. We want them to be remembered and cherished. And also to, ultimately to know that death is going to come to all of us. There's a famous story from the life of the Buddha where this woman had lost her baby, and she was grieving and distraught. And she was so distraught, she just was living like a beggar, in the street, and not bathing and not eating and wailing. And, she heard that the Buddha was there, and she went to the Buddha, and she complained to him and screaming and wailing and saying, "Bring my baby back to life." And he said, well, if you can go to the house of someone who has not lost someone and bring me a mustard seed, which is the smallest little spice, bring me back a mustard seed from a house where no one's died, then I'll bring your baby to life. So, of course, she goes around every village. And of course, in every village, in every household, death has come, because we're human. We're not immortal. And that process of hearing about everyone experiencing death, she goes back to the Buddha. She's calm, she's bathed, she's got herself together, and she asks to become a disciple, and she becomes a nun, and she receives teachings, and she becomes enlightened. So ultimately, we all are going to come to the end of our lives, and those we love are going to come to the end of their lives. And it doesn't make violence or that harshness any easier to accept. But in some way, it does help us rest, and help us love, through the pain of losing someone close.
Yeah. It's exactly what you said, that spiritual nature around death, meaning it's inevitable, and also we don't know when it's coming for any of us or people that we know. And that's the spiritual aspects of it that, for me, I've been integrating more into my life, and it's enabling me to live life more fully now, as opposed to waiting to live life. But moments like that, when a kid gets taken away, is, I trust in the divine order and everything. I accept that. But then, like, obviously my human nature, like, a kid, really? But my spiritual nature knows that in the human body is a kid, but in the soul body, it's an evolved being having an experience as a kid in this lifetime.
Yeah. I love what you said about not postponing.
Yeah.
So that, telling our families we love them every day, and not getting uptight about small things, not letting the small things take over, not letting anger take over, asking forgiveness when we screw up, which we do, and just not postponing all of that, so that we're living a life of resolution. We're not leaving things undone. And yet, like you, it's things like that are, I don't think, obviously we have to accept the reality of life because this happens. At the same time, from a moral standpoint, those are things we should not accept because they're not acceptable for an evolved culture to allow those things to happen and to enable those things. And
Yeah. And that's exactly where I was at with it as well. Of that. But then this other part of me is like, this is not right. Like, I don't feel like this is right as a collective of us being together, all as one, loving each other, accepting each other from there. There's some things that say like this isn't acceptable. And I've been like in this dance of like, okay, the spiritual side, do I just allow nature to take its course? Or this other part of like this burning energy and desire to like talk about this stuff and let's create. We can create solutions together. But we have to come, like you said, from the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we keep wanting to evolve the world. So making the world a better place is a good thing.
Yeah.
At the same time as there's, we can't fight against, we all know people in our lives who something happened 30 years ago and they still won't accept it. You're like, well, it happened, I'm still mad about, we have to let those things go because they happened, but we don't have to, from a moral standpoint, we don't accept them as being okay when things are wrong.
Thank you. So let's talk about the Himalayas.
Okay.
We'll love to hear about your journey. And also you have a recent book that you released as well, which talks about this. And I always love to hear about this and what led to the creation of you deciding to create the book that you created.
Great. Well, the book is called Adventure in Zanskar, Zanskar. And Zanskar is this tiny, tiny little valley at the northernmost tip of India. And so it's there. If you know the map of India, there's a little piece that sticks up. And Zanskar is in the middle. It's a valley, and the valley floor is 10,000 feet above sea level. So just like walking on the floor, you're already really high, and then you go up from there. And I went in 1983, and there were no roads, there was no electricity, there were no cell phones, there was no GPS, there was no internet. I know it feels like a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. I had a paper map from the Indian Army.
Wow.
It sort of basically showed some dotted lines for footpaths, more or less accurate, a little less accurate than more. And it showed concentric circles of when you would go up in elevation and down in elevation. And I charted a route, which was about 500 miles. And I walked for a couple months, and I went on my own. I carried everything on my back, and no porters, no horses, no guides. I spoke a little bit of Tibetan, a little bit of Hindi, a little bit of Urdu, which is a language that they speak in Kashmir. And I learned Zanskari is a lot like Tibetan because it's part of the Tibetan plateau. So I learned Zanskari as I went, and I walked, and I was just at the top of the mountain. So I'd go up in above the tree line. There's snow, and you look down and you see the snow peaks below you, which is kind of wild. It's like you're in an airplane, but you're standing on the ground. You're just looking down at this sea of snow peaks. And the people are all really, really happy. I had the best time there, which is why I wanted to write the book, because they're practicing Buddhists, and they really believe that their life is meant to show kindness to others. So they're very generous. You'll see things like the kids, they fight to give each other the best things. So if they get like a big chunk of meat in their soup, they'll like give it to the other one. So this whole thing of cultivating generosity is their practice. That's kind of how the young kids compete, is giving each other things. And they're very easygoing. The women are very free. The women can marry up to 4 men, and usually they marry brothers, because in the winter the men often go trading. The rivers freeze and they take their horses, and they'll be gone for 3, 4, 5 months at a time. And so, to keep everything going, you need, it works out well. But the women are also, they're just they're just like wild. They're fun, they're rowdy, they're direct, they're not shy, they're beautiful. And I just had, people would invite me into their homes. Sometimes I would sleep outside. Sometimes I met other travelers who were also walking. There weren't that many people there at the time. And I really experienced both the way that being in nature for long periods of time can help you become more still in your mind. And once you become more still in your mind, you start to see how much garbage your mind is churning up. So some days I'd walk, and if I was walking up and I was having a hard day in my mind, like everything, my pack weighed more, the route was harder. And if I was happy, everything was easy. So I just started to learn a little bit more experientially what meditation teaches you, is that you just sit through. The mind's a machine. It's going to churn out thought. And sometimes the thought's going to be good. Sometimes the thought's going to be bad. And you learn to stay centered. You learn to just watch the show. And that was really the power of being there, and being with people who were just so generous. Oh my God, they were just like really unattached, really beautiful in their being, not just with me, but with each other. And that gave me a sense that, yeah, we could do okay as human beings. We could get it together.
What was the moment that had you decide you were ready to come home?
Well, I came and went a couple of times over the 4 years, and I come back and make a little bit of money and then go back again. And then one year I came back for 9 months, and I ended up doing 6 months of retreat in different centers in the States. So I realized that's all I wanted to do. And I was in my early 20s, so I wasn't attached. I didn't have a family. I didn't, I could live very simply. And eventually I came back to the West because I met a group of people, and we wanted to start a meditation community in the West. So it was time. I never really felt like I was there to live there. I was there to learn. And it was a gift to be there. I actually still have friends there. I went back in 2019, right before the pandemic. And I was living in the town where the Dalai Lama lives for about a year. And I had an Indian friend, and she and I were about the same age, and she didn't speak any English. And we just spoke Hindi together. I hadn't seen her since 1986. And I went back in 2019 and we reconnected. And I just FaceTimed with her 2 days ago, which is kind of totally wild. She was like my soul sister. She lived at the top of this mountain in India, and she was really brave, and she was just beautiful, beautiful human being. And we were just like best friends, and we reconnected as if no time had passed, even though we're a lot older now. And now we can, her son, who was 2 at the time, he's grown and he speaks really good English. So I call him, and we WhatsApp. That's kind of wild. But yeah, it was time to be in the West. Yeah. But I encourage, any of your listeners, if you feel called to have an adventure, do it. Really, really do it. It can help to get out of the track that we believe that we're on, and sometimes realizing that we're not so tied And it doesn't have to be a massive adventure. It doesn't have to be years, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It's amazing what you can do on not very much money. And it's good. It's good to get out of our known environment for a little bit. It helps us reframe, because more things look possible afterwards.
Yeah. I can only imagine seeing that generosity and those beautiful experiences in the East. And you got to see that and integrate that new way of experiences, like you said, the humanness that's actually out there. And then coming back into the West, in which obviously it's more on the opposite side of stuff, but it just shows you that hope of what we can be, and it's actually possible for us to get along as well and be generous for each other, loving, supportive. And for me, that's the hope that I see. And I've never even been there. It's definitely my bucket list, but that's something that I feel that is totally possible for the West, this country, to actually start to integrate that as well. But obviously we gotta shift the stuff that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. And the thing about being in the mountains is everyone's basically equal. You all have about the same money. There's nobody super rich and there's nobody super poor. And all the studies they've done in the West, they show that you need a certain amount to live and feel like you have security of food, clothing, shelter, education, health. All those things need to be taken care of. But then above that, more money doesn't make you happier. So, there are countries in Europe that are talking about a living wage where, like in Holland, they provide you with a certain basic amount that's not subsistence. It's enough to actually live on. And, I don't know whether we'll get to that from where we are now, but really providing for people's basic well-being so that their potential can thrive is a responsibility of a government. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take care of each other. And, we take care of each other in our neighborhoods and in our families and in our school communities. And then it's the responsibility of those that are organizing our culture to take care of everyone in a bigger way. And of course, that's hard. We live in a country where there's so many differences, and it's not all homogeneous. In Zanskar, everyone's the same. They all know each other. They've known each other for generations. They know your uncle and your granduncle and your great great granduncle. Everybody knows everybody's business. So, of course, it's a lot easier when it's a very small community like that. And America has a lot of different issues, but I do think if we start really visualizing the world we want to live in, where people aren't suffering, we'll find ways to get there. I don't know what they are. I wish I did, but
I feel like our heart knows, our collective heart.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like we were saying, visualizing that world that you like to see. And usually visualizations with like law of attraction, stuff like that, when you visualize and you feel it and you get in that knowingness, you get guided. Like actions to take and your state of being. But I love the word that you said, community, because I truly feel that like if we're able to have more loving communities, which there are some loving communities out there in the US, I'm not even gonna like dismiss that. But the more those communities actually can grow when people can go. So like you said, like the suffering, to be able to work through it, be that support system and be loving for each other. People who feel like they need to inflict pain on others because they're dealing with so much pain can actually have a community of support to actually help them to process the pain that they're going through.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm hopeful. Even in these weird times, I am hopeful. It's kind of crazy, but yeah.
No, I believe it's not. It's you've seen it. You've seen it live.
Yeah.
So, and we're all connected. We're all are one. We're all in that space of consciousness. So, if there's one person who can do it, the whole
It's
world.
possible. Right. Yeah. Totally possible. Great.
Oh, so
All right.
we are at the top of the hour. Wow. So, two things. One, for people who want to learn more about you and what you do and the amazing things that you're doing for the world, where can they find you? Also, do you have anything that you can offer to our audience? Any, whatever it may be? I know you have an app, so we want to allow the space to talk about that and anything else. And then the last thing is, what is one parting message that you would love to share with our audience?
Great. So the best place to find me is innerstrengtheducation.org. And that's where all my work with youth is. So you can find everything there. And my personal website is amyedelstein.com, which is hardly updated, but you can find me there. Only so many hours in the day. And Inner Strength Education's on Instagram and Facebook. The app is called Inner Strength Vibe, VIBE, and it's on the App Store and on Google Play. It's free to download. There is no paywall. There's no credit card required. It's designed for teens. So if you have a teenager in your life, please encourage them to download the app. It's got meditations. It's got stuff about the development of the brain. It's got exercises. It's got notifications to support kids through and to help them have fun. We're expanding out with more gamification. We do have a leaderboard, but we're working on some fun things over the next year. And it's designed for youth. So it's, and that's why there's no paywall. So we have, we fundraise for our nonprofit and we put that towards making these tools accessible. And there are also mental health resources that are curated by my team that are free and accessible and culturally responsive. So for students who need, teens who need any extra mental health support, don't know where to go, at least in the Philly area, there's some national ones as well, but it'll give youth a place to go that they can find trusted resources or direction to trusted resources. The books are at bookstores or on Amazon, Adventure in Zanskar, or the book about stories from the classroom and the philosophy behind the teen program, The Conscious Classroom, which is it's fun. It's not really a how-to. And then there are a lot of audios on Inner Strength Education that are free. So, and I have a podcast called The Conscious Classroom Podcast, which is on all the podcast platforms. So you can find me and feel free to email me. I do read everything that comes to me. And thank you so much. It was really great to talk with you both and to be able to share daily magic and what that is and help manifest it so that, all your listeners can feel uplifted and connect to that magic in themselves.
Awesome. And thank you for sharing your magic with us and with our audience. This was definitely a powerful conversation that helped me to shift.
Good.
You shift since this conversation?
It was a great conversation. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Until next time, stay magical.